Ladies and gentlemen, here is the latest bulletin from the Intercontinental Radio News.
Step into the sand.
This is Macabre Grimoire with Ari Show, Travis Nye, and Robert Mayling.
For in that sleep of death, what dreams may come, when we have shuffled off this mortal coil, must give us pause. William Shakespeare, Hamlet. Hey everybody, welcome to Macabre Grimoire, Chapter 9. I am your host, Ari Show, here with my fellow co-hosts, Robert Mayling and Travis Nye. And this episode, we are going to be talking about near-death experiences.
That kind of makes sense on the intro, because that's kind of depressing. Even reading it, or hearing you read it, I'm like, oh. I'm like,
just brought it down.
my grandma.
Just bringing it down now. Oh, gee. Why, did your grandma have a near-death experience?
No, she's actually still alive, but it's coming.
That's fair. That's fair. You gotta prepare for it.
I'm not dead yet. Well, you will be soon.
Close enough. So, yeah.
So a near-death experience, for the uninitiated, is a personal experience associated with death or impending death. Such experiences may encompass a variety of sensations, including detachment from the body, feelings of levitation, total serenity, security, warmth, the experience of absolute dissolution, and the presence of light. Near-death experiences are recognized as part of some transcendental and religious beliefs in the afterlife. Because often these near-death experiences will, and we'll get to that, will actually reflect the, while they will reflect the religion of the person having the experience, but at the same time there's a whole bunch of universal like beats or themes in a near-death experience that like every culture has. But it's interesting. Mm-hmm. So as we go here, the other thing is that I'm going to run down some different models that have been used to describe NEDs and used by especially neuroscience to try and suggest a subjective explanation for what causes an NDE. Mm-hmm. And you know, there's a lot of these theories, and they sound very scientific. However, I would be quick to point out that none of them have ever been actually, in my digging here, fully like scientifically proven or been like fully repeatable in a study where you could consistently be like, oh, this is not, or this is definitely what causes it.
Right, because you can't put spirit in a box. Just saying.
Can't put spirit in a box.
This is actually going to be an interesting topic because I'm researching for my own production things that kind of induce fear. So that'll be good.
Death is a big catch-all for a lot of that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And then this field is not without its hoaxes, because I tend to be very open-minded about these, but you should always keep in mind that there are con artists out there. The most famous one and most recent one that I know of is from in 2015, The Boy Who Came Back from Heaven, A True Story, published in 2010 by Kevin and Alex Malarkey.
Now, when you know it says a true story, that they're trying to, like, get you to believe them.
And when his last name is Malarkey.
Yes!
And I did not pick up on the last name until just now.
Are you serious? I remember.
Because I didn't notice it until I was reading it out loud. And now that I see it in the notes and read it out loud, I'm like, holy crap, their names are even Malarkey.
I know! I remember when this first came out, I was like, when the story broke, I was like, oh my god, like, how could you not know that this was fake because of their last name and the whole thing that they actually put in there, a true story.
Yeah. But the common publisher tactic, you know. It's like,
well, also a common liar thing, too, is like, this is true, I'm telling you the truth, that you have to believe me.
Believe me.
Mm-hmm.
Believe
me. Yes.
Okay, let's not go there.
No, but I know where you're getting that from.
Yes. So there's some common elements to near-death experiences. Researchers have identified the common elements that define a near-death experience. And the general features include impressions of being outside one's physical body, visions of deceased relatives and religious figures, transcendence or egotic or spatio...
Spatio-temporal boundaries.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I'm really good at words. Complicated words. I should have specified.
Many common elements have been reported, although a person's interpretation of these events often corresponds with their cultural, philosophical, or religious beliefs in experiencing it. For example, in the USA, where 46% of the population believes in guardian angels, they will often be identified as angels or deceased loved ones. Whereas Hindus will often identify the figures that are with them as messengers of the god of death. So here's the big laundry list of common things. There is no hard fast rule because I read through a whole bunch of just anecdotal near death experiences.
Oh, sure.
And a lot of them have missing a few of them, but here's some big points that seem to correspond with a whole crapload of them. A sense or awareness of being dead. A sense of peace, well-being, painlessness, positive emotions, and a sense of removal from the world. An out-of-body experience is really common, but as we'll get to in one of the explanations, is not always the case.
Right.
Let's see. The tunnel experience. This is the one that, in the picture we're going to use for this episode, is a painting by Harmonius Bosch, Ascent of the Blessed, that has a deceased person traveling through a tunnel of light, and it is, dead on what I think of when I think of the tunnel that they'd be traveling through. And I've even seen this used in different religious things and stuff like that, describing what the tunnel would be like. So that's that painting, especially that top part with the tunnel, is what we'll use. But the tunnel and that bright light and the warm light being a good, safe place and being at peace is a super common thread of NEDs, or NDEs, pardon me.
No, fine.
Yeah, encountering beings of light that are possibly deceased loved ones, receiving a life review, commonly referred to as seeing one's life flash before one's eyes. Now, this one in particular I wanted to note because my great-grandfather had a near-death experience. And getting into when we get into the explanations and some of the theories about what caused these, this is part of what throws off the cultural inference theory, where it's just people hear about it, and so then that kind of like alien abductions, where it's once those happened, almost and everybody described the Greys, suddenly everyone describes their aliens like the Greys, stuff like that. Whereas with near-death experiences, they were not. I'm getting ahead of us, but they weren't really covered in depth until the 70s. It's 75 is the first major article about it that went national and stuff. But my great-great-grandfather, he was fishing in a lake in Minnesota, and they were using this would have been the 20s or earlier, and they were fishing in a lake with dynamite. And so what they were doing is they'd taken a stick of dynamite with a long fuse, they'd stick it in a jar and with a rock, and then they'd throw it off, and, that's how they were fishing. And he was the only one in his group of 4 people that could swim, so he'd jump out of the boat and swim out, and he'd gather up all the fish and throw them in the boat. Well, they had one that didn't go off, that was a dud or whatever. And so they waited, and it was I guess it's not going to go off. So then they set off another one, he jumped in the water, and then
the first one,
the earlier one, went off while he was in the water and blasted him out.
Shit.
The only things I heard, because I was super young, but and my dad's retold it and stuff, is just one of the things we all remembered was him talking about that thing they say about your life flashing before your eyes and floating and all that. He's it's true. He's I saw everything, and I saw when I was a little kid, and I saw my mom and dad, and he saw relatives that were long past and stuff like that. Yeah, so he had a really in-depth...
Whoa!
And described it with all these hallmarks that we're talking about way before... And this is not a guy who was super following the media or anything like that. This is a super rural farm kid from...
busy doing his own thing and living his life, not really paying attention to anybody.
And not a science fiction person or even a novel reader back then. So it's just where would he have gotten these ideas from? But this is, what he reported to us. And so, whenever I hear someone say your life flashes before your eyes, I always think of, and the other thing is that he's the one I'm named for. So he's Robert Richard Baling, the first one.
Oh.
So, another one is approaching a border or a decision by oneself, and others report that they are forced to return to their body, often accompanied by a reluctance to return to their body, like it's not time yet or something like that.
I've actually heard of this too when people are doing past life regressions.
Yep.
And then if you also regress to a soul level, which is like one step beyond just going to a past life, they're actually going to like your actual soul and like where your soul exists. And people have reported that there's that reluctance to return because they're in such an area of just like euphoria and peace that to return back to your body and back to your own consciousness is very difficult because you don't want to leave that. So, and I had a friend that she does that as for a living, and she had one client where it was hard to get her to come back, and she was actually like legitimately scared that this woman wasn't going to be able to come back into her body.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's.
Let's see. And then another one is then the experience of suddenly finding yourself back inside of your body. Getting into some of the cultural aspects we talked about earlier, this Gregory Shushan published an analysis of afterlife beliefs from 5 different ancient civilizations: Old and Middle Kingdom Egypt, Sumeria, Old Babylonia, Mesopotamia, Vedic India, pre-Buddhist China, and pre-Columbian Mesoamerica. He compared them with historical and contemporary reports of near-death experiences and shamanic afterlife journeys. He says he found similarities across time, place, and culture that could not be explained by coincidence. He also found elements that were specific to cultures. He concludes that some form from the mutual influence between experiences of an afterlife and culture, and probably influence one another through what they inherit, and in turn influences in their individual near-death experiences. So I guess I slaughtered the wording of that, but basically the takeaway there is that someone from India might see agents of the god of death, someone from America might see guardian angels, but they're still going to have those common hallmarks,
Right.
Strangely consistently across the board.
So this is a lot what I experience in like my line of work, is that everybody has these identifiers of things, but essentially they're the same thing. It's just the title that you give to it and the meaning that you give to it. So
Yeah.
So like you said, like somebody in like India will say, well, this is like the god of death, whereas like somebody in America will say like, well, that's my guardian angel. But they're essentially the same being is what they're talking about. It's just the title that you give to it. And so even like when I do some of the work that when I'm like interpreting like signs and symbols, it's hard to like, it's like if I'm seeing like a pitchfork, I'm trying to put my own meaning to a pitchfork behind it. But like to you, it like you understand what it means, like it just, I don't have like a, what is that? What's the word I'm looking for? Like a reference point to relate to it. So I'm just like, I don't know what I'm seeing. Like, I guess it's a pitchfork, but really it's like, no, it's a trident. You know what I mean? Like, that's how like people like relate the different things. It's just based on your own life experiences. This is how they're experiencing it. So that's why I think a lot of people are like, it's like such a religious experience for them, but it's like, well, I feel like people are experiencing the same thing. It's just what they are defining for themselves based on their life experiences. Did I just...
No, you're fine. I'm just skimming notes here.
You should just do like a blog, like an ink blot test, but only showing like real tangible items just to see how people translate them.
I should.
Like show like an outline of a car and see how people
right
translate that or something.
Oh yeah. Because like I had a reading that I did a couple days ago, and I saw in my vision, like in my mind's eye, I saw a truck, but I should have specified pickup truck, not just said truck. Yeah. And I specifically saw a pickup truck, and I don't know why I didn't say it how I saw it. And that difference of me just saying truck and not specifying was meant a lot more to the sitter than it did to me. So I should have specifically said pickup truck, and then she would have been like, oh. And so it's so funny how people are just so like
devil in the details.
Yes, it's so crazy.
Yeah, that one leaves me scratching my head because I'd just be like, a truck,
Right, yeah. Like if I say truck, you're thinking pickup truck or semi-truck,
It would depend on the context, but unless you were out on a farm and it was like harvest season or something, I'd be like pickup truck.
Right. So if I'm doing a reading for you and I'm like, okay, so there's a male spirit, he's crossed over, and so he's telling me that he's been gone for a long time and he died quickly, and you'd be like, oh, that's my grandfather. It's like, okay, well, he's showing me a picture of a truck, and you would think,
Pick 'em up truck.
yeah, see? So it was kind of like that, and so they're just like, no, I don't know anything about a truck, and I'm like, So that's kind of, yeah. Sorry. Tangent.
No, that's cool. So there are a lot of theories, and so I have lots of notes on them here, but we're going to really like give you a quick flyover version of them, because some of them really get into the weeds and really exhaustive, but like I said, none of them have been like explicitly proven. The first theory is obviously the spiritual one, in which, people say is like maybe it's an out-of-body experience, or, people actually seeing, the afterlife. Mm-hmm. And let's see, there have been 5 different studies on this. Here's the limitations with that one. 5 different studies have been carried out to test the accuracy of the out-of-body experience parts of this. This is what you were talking about, Ari, in the messenger, where they would give unusual targets in locations that were only someone who was having like an NDE would be able to see, like up by the ceiling and stuff like that.
Like clocks and weird signs and trinkets and stuff, because what they would do is, like, during surgery, they would just have these items in the surgical operating room up above the lights. So their theory is that if your spirit is going to physically float outside of your body, then if your spirit is floating up above, then you should be able to have a different perspective on the room, because a lot of people report being able to see the perspective of like the surgery and like what's going on in the room and have like a different perspective, but there's no way to prove it. So one way to prove it would be to put something that's odd and out of place in an area that nobody else can see, and one good place to do that is on top of the lights. So then they would place like clocks, they would place like I said, just different oddball things or signs and stuff, so then they would ask these individuals,
things that would hopefully they would know,
catch their attention. Yeah. And so then they'd be like, well, what else did you see? Like, and then if they didn't describe that particular object, then it'd be like, well, and this is the part that irritates me, is like if they didn't say that particular object, like I saw a pink bow, then it's like, oh, well, then I guess your whole experience bullshit. Like that didn't really happen. Like you're just fabricating that based off of like maybe what you've seen on TV.
Yeah, and there are some researchers in here that were like super careful to like not say that
right.
You don't dismiss a near-death experience, even if it is a product purely of like internally of your mind and subconscious and stuff.
Sure.
It's like it shouldn't be dismissed just because it's not an
well, it's
actual,
a
like,
super profound experience.
Yeah,
so
and they have a major, profound impact on the people that have them. And then, so, like, they did the experiment you were talking about,
yes.
where they had 12 patients reported leaving their bodies in those surgeries. But unfortunately, none of them could describe the visual targets. Although this is a small sample, the failure of purported out-of-body experiences to describe the hidden targets raises questions about the accuracy of the anecdotal reports described above. And my note here is that, obviously 12 people is not a scientific... It's not a sample by any way, shape, or...
by no means is that.
But it is interesting. That they did not see it, and we'll get to that later. There's one report where they did a study where it's like half the people that described the surgery like from outside of their body, half of them got right what equipment was being used on them.
Yes,
and half of them didn't. Let's see. So. Yeah, there's a lot of people who dismiss NDE researchers as pseudoscientific.
Yes.
And their big worry there is, which obviously is like a confirmation bias kind of thing, where it's like, where they're looking for a destination, and then how can I make the data get me to that destination? Right. Which is a problem. And something else I was hearing about this, something I was listening to on the radio, it wasn't about near-death experiences, but it was talking about something just like this. Mm-hmm. Oh, I was reading Phenomenon by same woman that wrote like Area 51 and a few other books that I've referenced before and that are like very good books on like this topic. And she was talking about how now this book in particular was about like MK Ultra and like remote viewing and stuff like that.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And it said the biggest thing that the Department of Defense had trouble with in their research was that the only people they can find are either A, true believers who have just like ridiculously bad confirmation bias.
Oh.
So the Pentagon officials are just kind of like, I don't know if I trust their data. And then it's like there's only them, and then there's diehard skeptics who are just like, I won't even entertain this. I won't write a paper about it. I won't do a study about it because it's so ridiculous. I won't even entertain it. And so the Pentagon is just kind of like, so how do we test this?
Right.
Because either you won't touch it or you'll get all over it, and then
You'll mess it up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I feel like a little bit of that with this, where it's just kind of like, because it's such a hot button and controversial, it's just like, you got researchers who are super, super like, oh, this is definitely a thing.
Yes.
And it is amazing, and blah, blah, blah. And then you've got people who are just like, well, no matter what, it has to be, it has to be all in their head.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
But we just need to figure out how it's all in their head.
Mm-hmm.
Seems like both have picked the destination, and now they need to find the data to back their destination.
Right.
Which is not good science.
No.
And so, getting into the science a little bit here, there's a bunch of psychological explanations, and of the scientific explanations, I found a lot of these to be the weakest, because like the depersonalization model doesn't really work that great, because people that suffer them usually it's very unpleasant, anxiety, panic, emptiness, stuff like that, whereas NDEs are basically the exact opposite of that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Let's see. Expectancy model. This is the one I talked about a little bit with my great-grandfather.
Oh, yeah.
Where it's just like it's wish fulfillment, or they've probably read from outside sources about it.
Yes.
But you look at somebody like from ancient Samaria, or my grandfather in the 1920s, or great-grandfather in the 1920s, and it's just like, these guys were not, like sitting around watching special Leonard Nimoy in search of about near-death experiences. This was not in their wheelhouse.
Right.
Let's see. So we cover that one.
Basically, to me, like if anybody's like super duper religious and they talk about a near death experience, I'm kind of like, I don't know about you. Like I'm a little bit quick to dismiss like their experience, just because like I think they want so badly to see angels, because like they need that physical confirmation that what they've held so dearly to their hearts their entire life, their religion that they followed to a T, that now that they've had this experience and I've seen angels, it's kind of like, have you? Or are you sure you weren't experiencing some sort of like ocular, phenomenon? And that's where I get a little bit suspicious. Like as soon as somebody mentions Jesus, I'm like, I'm out. Okay. And this is coming from me, so I think that's pretty significant.
But another psychological one is the disassociation model, which is just that something bad is happening, so your mind is just trying to disassociate from it. But I found this one to be super weak, and they didn't even bother to give like a counter argument to it, because it's so like it might as well be just saying, they wanted to do this, so their brain did this. Oh, that's not science. There's no
right.
Like, what, huh?
Right.
And then like birth model, which is saying that like the tunnel and the light are. It's like your dying brain is trying to reimagine birth, the like most traumatic big thing that happened to you. But as many people will point out, among other things, like with C-sections and a bunch of other stuff, you wouldn't have experienced it. You don't actually remember it, etc.
Right. Does the article talk about the shutting down of the occipital lobe and like why you would see a tunnel of light, and that's why you see light?
I remember hearing about that a little bit. I don't know. It might get more into the.
I don't want to like jump on it if it's in here.
We'll get. These are the psychological ones.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Now we're going to get more into like the chemical and mechanical
cool.
ones. So the physiological ones. Yeah. Oh my God. Okay.
Neuroscientists Olaf Blanc and Sebastian de Guez, 2009, from the École Polytechnique Fédérale de la Soine, Switzerland, proposed a brain-based model with 2 types of NDEs.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
So there's one that's due to the bilateral, frontal, occipital, but primarily right hemispheric. See, yeah, we're getting into the weeds here, but basically, there's...
I can talk about this.
Oh, go for it.
Okay, so type 1 NDEs are due to bilateral, frontal, and occipital. So your frontal lobe is like right up on the front of your forehead, and your occipital is right in the back, like where you feel that like bump in the back of your head. So if you want to put your hand on the back of your head, and you can actually feel that bump.
You're excited about
I am
this
very
'cause you're
excited. I talk
talking
about a
like-
lot of brain stuff.
Like, I'm pretty sure that was all one word.
And then it continues to say, but predominantly right hemispheric brain damage affecting the right temporal parietal junction. So if you want to put your hand on the right side of your brain, or the right side of your head, and characterized by out-of-body experiences, altered sense of time, sensations of flying, lightness, vection, and flying. So the right side of your brain is the part of you that's like very imaginative and creative, and so it's basically all of your senses, and that's why you feel that altered sense of time and sensations of flying, etc., etc. So that's why they're trying to categorize it into that category of experiences. The type 2 of near-death experiences are also due to bilateral frontal and occipital, which is basically the front of your brain and the back of your brain. So the front of your brain process is... Oh my gosh, okay, so the front of the brain is like your thinking, and the back of your brain is how you see. So like these two are kind of like they're kind of conflicting right now, but predominantly left hemispheric. So that's like your thinking side of your like how you think and how you process the more physical part of yourself. So they're talking about, let's see here, affecting the left parietal junction, characterized by a feeling of presence, meeting and communication with spirits, seeing of glowing bodies, as well as voices, sounds, and familiar music without vection. So that's kind of like how you experience and how you see things. And so you're basically, your brain is just having like this moment of just like this incredible, just like electrical storm is going on inside. And that's how they're trying to scientifically classify these experiences. So
like an overload between different hemispheres.
Yep. And so that's kind of why they're saying like I believe in what you're saying has happened to you, but here's a scientific explanation of what's going on in your brain and why you think that. So a lot of scientists will say that, like me and what I do is basically my brain malfunctioning, and like that's why you feel like you have feelings that you know things, or that you're communicating with spirit and that type of thing. But there's also a large part of it too where it's unexplainable. So then, can I do this last paragraph here?
Yeah.
Okay. So they suggest that damage to the bilateral occipital cortex may lead to vision. And the occipital cortex is actually the outside of your occipital cortex in the back of your brain. May lead to visual features of near-death experiences, such as seeing tunnel or lights, damage to unilateral or bilateral temporal lobe structures that's on the side of your head, like by your ears, and such as the hippocampus and amygdala. So the hippocampus actually goes over the top section of your brain, and amygdala. Oh my gosh, I'm having a brain fart. May lead to emotional experiences, memory, flashbacks, or life review. So your hippocampus is actually like how you feel and experience things, and that's why it's affecting that, and that's why they explain it that way. They concluded that future neuroscientific studies are likely to reveal the neuroanatomical basis of the NDE, which will lead to the demystification of the subject without needing paranormal explanation. So they're trying to say basically like, this is how science explains it, so just GTFO. But but you still have like, well, we kind of exist, like we're all energetic bodies, and our energy experiences life in different ways than just scientific. So you can say that yes, like science has an explanation, but there's also, your energy of your person.
And they've never been able to like prove it. They can't conducively in a lab trigger this and for obvious ethical reasons. Exactly. They can't trigger this and then go, okay, yep, that's clearly what's
right.
Let's see. So, some of the limitations of the neuroanatomical model is that it remains what we were just saying. It remains speculative because there's a lack of data.
Right.
Writes that although some of the
neuroanatomical models
proposed may serve to explain NDEs and pathways through which they are expressed, they remain speculative at this stage since they have not been tested with empirical studies.
So yeah,
and then we get into the neurochemical one, which I thought there's one of these that I'm looking for that was interesting. Like, there's the talk about the endorphins being released and stuff like that, but they get into the problem with that is that it would produce a lot more negative hallucinations than what NDEs tend to be.
Euphorical versus like panic and pain.
Yep. Let's see, and then there's like apoxia and anoxia, like low oxygen level based ones.
Yep.
The multifactorial is they just mentioned it could be some of this stuff combined with some of the physical neurological stuff we were just talking about, combined with the psychological.
Right.
Let's see. So yeah, the hypoxia thing, they kind of threw that out because they talked about all these test cases that they've done with pilots, and what pilots physically experience is nothing like an NDE, as far as like, rather than being serene and calm, they're usually like flailing around and almost like seizuring and stuff like that when they have it. So, so they're not sure on that one. Same thing that I just said is written there. Altered blood gas levels. It's difficult to interpret since NDEs have been observed both with increased levels and decreased levels of carbon dioxide. So, so the gas levels thing is really hard for them to
measure.
To pinpoint, and then,
Yeah, so basically, like, science is just trying to bring you down from trying to say that you met Jesus and you came back to tell your story all about it.
And those are the explanations, or the attempts at explanations, or the best they can come up with anyway.
Right.
You guys mentioned you had some possible stories or things with near-death experiences.
I want to hear yours, Travis.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So there I was.
Since you've been so quiet.
Handcuffed under an aircraft carrier in a barrel, trying to do this escape act.
Yes, that's exactly what it was, Robert. That is amazing. Needless to say, I did not survive that one. So here I am in my near-death experience, floating in purgatory.
You look good. You look good for a ghost.
You know, I don't really wrinkle and age as much anymore. It's good.
Good for you.
Yeah, I try to stay hydrated, but can't hold anything.
Just falser.
Yeah. So anyway, my near-death experience, I consider a near-death experience because, like, I could have died. So that's near-death, right?
Yeah, that's close enough, cool. Yeah.
So it was more of like a in-the-moment thing. Like, I don't really have a huge recollection of the in-between from beginning to end.
Okay.
All I know is I was doing demolition work in Milwaukee, and we were downtown, and there's this huge, like, 6-story building. And we were basically gutting the interior, which had happened, and then the 2 walls we had taken out on the exterior, so it was just a huge... At this point, we got it down to like 3 stories. It was a 3-story L shape, essentially, on the corner. And whenever they do construction like that in a big city, they put this huge, like, 8-foot fence around the perimeter of the sidewalk so people just don't walk by the construction. So I was in there, and my boss was super tight, and we were just picking bricks that were still good to palletize and then sell.
Yep.
Okay, so we were doing that, and the guy running the excavator swung the bucket and hit the wall, and, like, all this dust fell on me, and the wall shook, and I pointed at him, like, watch it, bud. Like, that is no joke. You need to be careful.
Yeah.
So, like, 20 minutes later, he did it again, and the wall was swaying super hard, and I'm, like, maybe 5 feet away from it.
What?
And so I took off in a dead sprint, and the wall had completely collapsed. And I have no idea how to do it, because I ain't got ups. I'm a white guy. And, like, somehow I had...
Just not a fast runner. Let's keep this PC.
PC.
You're not a fast runner.
I'm not a fast runner, nor am I a high jumper. So let's say, like, I cleared this 8-foot fence in time that it actually pushed the fence out, and I rode the fence into the street.
Wow.
Whoa.
Like, so however tall a 3-story building is,
right?
Like, I outran it before it collapsed.
Dang.
So that's like a matter of like 5 seconds. If that.
Yeah.
So that's like 60 feet in 5 seconds. Like, I was a 10-second car.
Right, yeah.
Like, but in that time period, like, I have no recollection of, like, what my physical body had done. Like, like that, I mean, all I remember is it, like, starting to collapse, the crumbling noise, and then I'm on the fence and a huge, like, dust cloud.
So it was literally like your fight or flight kicked in. You clearly flighted.
Right.
And
I'd like to say I
think-
fought for my life. It's a little bit more masculine.
I would say like your autonomous system kicked in, and basically your survival instinct was just like GTFO, let's go, dude, and like your adrenaline just went zip, and they got you out of there.
Right.
So the guy with the loader that hit it,
Yeah.
or any other people, were they hurt? Or?
No, he wasn't hurt because, of course, the wall fell outwards towards my direction, which the smart
Sure.
move would have been run towards the wall because there's a garage door that was no longer there.
Yeah.
That I could have just bypassed it, but of course my mind isn't like, let's run towards the collapsing wall.
Yeah.
It was
of
run
course.
away from it. And so that was definitely like, I've had a couple other crazy experiences, but that is definitely one that stands out in my mind as like I physically feel like my body took over and I just kind of blacked out from it. Like it was...
Like you have no recollection of like where your consciousness was at that point in
Yeah,
time.
like I'm just like, go. And then it just kind of took over. Like it's kind of crazy. Like I don't really have the flashbacks and stuff because I really feel like it wasn't me that made my body take off.
Oh, interesting. Like you don't even think it was...
Like my mind would have never said, all right, I need to run, I need to take 2 steps, make sure I shuffle real quick so I get the jump position and then clear that fence.
Oh, interesting.
My mind would have been like, yep, I'm screwed. Let's hope it don't make it to the fence. Like, no way in my mind would have said, like, I'm going over that fence.
Wow.
Wow.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And you're just like, now you just have this experience and you're just like, I don't know. I lived, I guess.
Yeah, like, here I am tell somebody else my tale.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
I don't even know. Because like, it wasn't like you're outside of your body. Like, you didn't actually like see yourself outside of your body
No.
doing this. You didn't have like any communication with anybody. It was just like all of a sudden you had this altered state of consciousness where you just weren't.
I was on the fence when it was done. That's all I know.
He was like, well, this is it.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like, it was crazy, for sure.
Have you like tried to like think over that events? Because I mean, there is like psychological experiences where like your brain basically just like shuts off its recording mechanism,
Yeah.
and it just goes into like just
Yeah.
goes into a mode, and just like you have no recollection of like anything.
Yeah, I mean, because it wasn't, like, an open field for me to run on. Like, there
Right.
was, like, rubble that I would have had to have, like, piled over that.
Right.
If it was a perfectly made, like, running
Did any
track.
witnesses see you actually like sprint, or like they were just like, man, that was...
like, after the dust settled, like, traffic had stopped, obviously, because,
course,
I mean, it's
yeah.
a big city.
Yeah.
And, like, everybody's, like, out of their car looking at me.
Right.
Like, are you okay? And then my dad was there because he worked.
Oh.
And he's like, what? And, like, this dust settled and seen me there, and then he went after the guy running the machine.
That's
And
fair.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah, like, I was like, holy crap. So,
Because that'd be interesting if somebody actually saw you. So it's possible, this is kind of a fun interpretation of it, I think. Like, maybe it was like a wrinkle in time.
I'd like
and,
to think I nightcrawlered it and just,
Yeah, right? That's kind of what I kind of think,
like, I'm going to go with that because that's
Yeah.
pretty BA.
Yeah,
So,
exactly.
Nice.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, nobody saw it. Nobody saw you. You don't know how it happened. All of a sudden, you're in point A to point B.
Yeah.
Because, like, people talk about, like, doing a form of, like, time travel where, like, basically time actually stretches out or basically gets quicker. So, like, there's times, and you could do this, like, when you're going to work, even, like, so, like, I really wanted to get to work on time. It was a snowstorm, and I left at my normal time. And based off the snow that we had, it would have taken me an extra 5 to 10 minutes to get there. I actually arrived an extra 10 minutes ahead of my normal time when I left at my regular time. So it was just like, I didn't speed. I was driving slower, but yet I still arrived 10 minutes ahead of time. So it's like, how did that happen? So maybe it's something like
I
that.
just wonder if
Yeah.
there was less traffic than
No.
normal, or...
Nope, it was
Don't
like,
be scientific, Robert.
Okay.
but
Let
no,
us live in our
I
moments.
get that, but there's no even on a normal day, I don't make it 10 minutes ahead of time. I'm always like right at the buzzer or a little bit before the buzzer, So that's one way to think of it.
There you go.
Just an idea, just tossing it out there.
So, near-death experiences. Ari, do you have any?
I don't have any NDEs. I've had like meditation experiences where I felt more like outside of my body, which is more into like the astral projection, which we've already covered, episode 1, in case you're interested.
Yep.
Or chapter 1, sorry. Anyways, I have read quite a few books though on people's own experiences and just noticed like common themes as far as like experiences that they have. And it's like, that's where I've kind of gotten to the whole tangent of, I don't think that this is like one particular religious experience for a person. I think there's a common theme where we're all kind of going to the same place. It's just your life experiences is defining what it is that you're seeing. So 2 books that I read, were Heaven is for Real, which if you're not familiar with, it's basically about how this little boy at 4 years old, maybe he was 3, doesn't matter. He's super young, way too young to die, right? He has like this massive infection from appendicitis, and he's in the hospital, and he ends up dying for a little while on the operating table. Well, then his dad, the parents don't know at this point in time that he's deceased. So he just starts, the parents are just like praying, like the dad is like praying and praying and praying and just praying to God, saying like, please, bring my son back, please, please, please. Now this is where the father, what he does for a living, he's a pastor. So it's kind of like, that's where I get kind of weird about it. But anyways, and the little boy actually is revived, and he makes it out of surgery, and he actually ends up thriving. He's like, I don't know, he's probably like 15 years old right now. So after this experience in the hospital, the doctors don't, because I don't think like he clinically died, but like the little boy was definitely outside of his body, because the little boy later mentions about how he went up to meet Jesus and about what heaven looks like. And he's just like mentioning this in bits and pieces. And the dad, as he's retelling the story, says about how he was super careful to not like guide him in the storytelling, like not to like plant stuff so then he would like misremember or like misstate things. It was always whenever he recounted this, he would just let his kid talk. So, trying to like figure out. So what the little boy says, he says, I saw you on your knees in this room, and like he described the room, praying to Jesus that I would be safe. And that's when Jesus told me that I needed to go back to my body and back to mom, to mommy and daddy. And so he was just like, there's no way that his son would have even known about that, because like, why would you tell your 3-year-old or 4-year-old son that, by the way, I was in the waiting room praying for you to like come back, be safe. Like, you're not going to tell them that, because first of all, that'd probably scare the shit out of them. Second of all, they're not going to understand. I mean, They might understand a little bit, but not, to the extent. So he also mentioned, he knew about that there was a, like they were pregnant, but they miscarried. And so when he got to heaven, he gets hugged right away by this girl who's just hugging him so tight. And she's just so happy to see him. And she has like dark curly hair and describes this girl in full detail. And then she said that he was her sister. And he's just like, I don't have a sister. Like, I don't have an older sister. I just have, my other, sister or whatever. And like, they've never told him that, that they had a child that they miscarried. So there's like little things like here and there that like, there's no way that he could have known at such a young age. And then the other thing like he describes that is consistent with other people that have had like heaven experiences is like what Jesus actually looks like. So there's this painter who, she was in her teens, and she had an experience where she's went to heaven or whatever. There's like a painting of like what Jesus looks like.
Yep.
Yeah. So it's like kind of interesting. So that's that book. And then the other one I read was 90 Minutes in Heaven. And again, the guy's a pastor, and he gets into a car accident, and like he's actually dead like on the scene of the car accident.
You really need to look into the high risk lifestyles of these pastors.
I know.
Seems like a dangerous occupation.
It does seem like a very dangerous occupation. So basically, he's pronounced dead on the scene. I mean, they have the blue tarp over his car and everything, but because he was like coming to or going to we'll just say a pastor convention, because it was like that's essentially what he was going to, was some sort of retreat where a bunch of other pastors were there. One of the persons going to the convention recognized his car because they were good friends, and he pulled over and demanded to the EMT staff, like, I need to pray over my friend's body. Like, I just need to, like, I understand he's deceased, but it's my job to minister to him. And so they allowed him to go into the car and be with him and pray over his body. And he prayed furiously, he says, for like, I don't know, 20, 30 minutes, just constantly just praying as hard as he could. And then all of a sudden, he comes back to life, which was like impressive, I think. I'm not a doctor, but it sounds impressive. And then he explained like his whole experience about how he saw, old, people that had passed on. They're happy to see him, the angels' voices, the singing, et cetera, describing things that like he could not have known without being there. So it's just kind of interesting, those experiences. So those are a couple books you can probably check into, but that's besides the point. So
I'd almost like to say when I was younger, like 3 years old.
Yeah.
I kind of had an out-of-body experience.
Yeah.
Similar to what we're talking about. Because it's weird, because in a previous chapter we talked about like reoccurring dreams and dream interpretation. But this was actually a dream that I had reoccurring over and over.
Yeah.
But it felt real. Where basically I seen a toy, in this case it was a yo-yo traveling on the floor, unrolling the string, leaving like a trail of the yo-yo string behind, leading into my room where I would see myself and what I was doing and stuff at that moment. But I tell this to my parents, and it all originated because I was like, yeah, I remember that house, and like, well, we moved out of there when you were 3, and I could like get as detailed as like the pictures on the wall, like the color carpet, where the furniture was at in my room, everything, like my toy, like my entire room layout, the entire house, like to a T, perfect detail, and without ever having photos of this room or anything like that. And it's that 3-year-old mind that, still remembers those things.
Right.
Yep. And that's honestly my interpretation of a near-death experience, like that out-of-body and everything like that is, to me, it's almost more scientific, is the fact that, this goes back to me being younger and thinking I could make, power energy balls
Well, it's
and
that
hand
childlike
chakras
mind,
and stuff.
yeah.
Exactly. And I remember one of the things that I was reading, like when I had dial-up internet and had to wait forever for a document to load, and it was very valuable information because I didn't want to hit refresh, that, all these powers and abilities were more capable of happening when you're younger because your mind is more open to these things.
Yep.
But I also think in a stressful situation, such as a near-death experience, your mind reverts to that primitive thinking, to the fight or flight scenario type thing, but also goes back to, like your mind is more capable of opening up and using a higher percentage of its abilities to see exactly what's going on around you. So that's why I'm honestly for like mind reading and stuff like that.
Oh, sure.
Because I think if you've trained long enough that your mind is capable of doing it, because we don't know what the full capabilities of the human mind is.
Right. Because, whenever I go through like training classes for psychic stuff, it sounds really
When you go to
nerdy.
Jedi Academy.
I go to Jedi Academy. They always talk about using your childlike mind and using your imagination, because when you use your imagination, that's when you're able to tap into more of those things.
Yep.
And there's less judgment, and that's how you can kind of like know
it's a very
things.
matrixy thing.
It's the Matrix.
Don't try to bend the spoon, that's impossible.
Yeah, it
I
is.
only realized there is no spoon.
And it's already bent.
That's right.
Or is it? Dun, dun, dun.
Ari will see you now. I mean, the Oracle will see you now.
Yeah, there you go.
So that was Chapter 9, Near-Death Experiences. Once again, just a reminder to everybody that, if you're fascinated by this topic or you got your own experience that you want to share, be sure to comment on the, post on thesuempire.com or the Facebook page. We'd love to hear from you and hear about your stories on this and what you think about this, because this is a very interesting open-ended thing that touches a lot of people, and I'm super curious about what's out there.
Yeah, or send us a message if you're feeling kind of shy.
Yeah, absolutely. You could send us an email or a message or whatever if you don't want to communicate open like that.
Yeah.
So,
Can I add one more thing?
yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So if you have like a spooky experience, like ghosts, odd experience, or anything that's like ever happened to you, I mean, it doesn't even have to be on the topic of the episode that we're even on. Please send it to us, because I would love to read it on the episode and like share it. If you don't
absolutely.
mind. Yeah,
And
if you
even
want to
if you're
share it.
open
Yeah.
enough to do like an actual interview, that'd be awesome.
Yeah, that too.
We welcome guests.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Live or pre-recorded.
Yeah, whatever.
Or if you're dead and you just need to send, if you need to do an interview via Ouija board, we can set that up.
Oh my gosh, I heard the best Ouija thing today. I'll tell you off the air. We'll talk about it in another episode.
the best Ouija thing.
Yeah,
I like how you say that like it's like, I saw this thing on Twitter. But instead it's like, I saw this thing on a Ouija board.
It's good. It's
Is
really
hashtag Ouija in your favorites for search?
good. No, it should be, though.
Nice.
All right.
So, thanks, everyone. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time.
Macabre Grimoire is a production of theSueEmpire.com. Learn more at macabregrimoire.com.
Last night in bed